Thanks, Bill. So, as he said, I'm Dianne Haulcy. I'm president and CEO of the Family Partnership. We're a nonprofit in Minneapolis. But I'm also the host of the podcast Early Risers that is sponsored by Little Moments Count and NPR. In Early Risers, it's all about how to talk to young people about race and racism. So Bill asked me to come today and talk about why I support Before Racism and why I believe it's important. So I'm going to tell you a little story. So it was early 2021, and I got a phone call from the Star Tribune, and they said, there's this new program that's kind of being launched. It hasn't really formed yet, and we want to know what you think about it. And I said, okay, can you tell me a little bit about it? And they said, well, it's called Before Racism. Have you heard of it? No, I have not heard of it. But tell me what it's about. Well, there's this guy, his name is Bill, and he wants to start teaching young children about race and racism. And I said, oh, and he's white? And they said, yes. I said, that is a great idea. I said, no, I don't know Bill, but I think this is a fabulous idea, and I'll tell you why. I said, because first of all, I'm born and raised in Minnesota. I actually was born in Eagan and grew up most of my life in Golden Valley. And I grew up in a time, I'm telling my age a little bit, but it was a time where there were very, very few people of color. In fact, when we were in Eagan, we were the only family of color on our block. And so I know what it means to face racism, in particular in Minnesota, which is different. It's very different here. Yeah, because we don't like to talk about a lot of stuff, but including this. So I thought about the times that, you know, as a young kid, and then also as now I'm raising my children, I've raised my children here. The times when I was a young child, how beneficial it would have been to have, to been around other young children who could have engaged in a conversation with me. And so I told them I think this is a great idea, and then I got off the phone and they wrote a little article about the launching of Before Racism. Well, if any of you know Bill, some of you do know Bill. If you don't know Bill, you will know him, because that's how he is. And so later on, he reached out to me to get more informally involved with Before Racism. And here's what I'll say. And this is part of what I think I may have told him when he approached and said, hey, do you want to be more involved? And here's what I said. One of the reasons why I even started the podcast Early Risers was after the murder of George Floyd, and I began to have some real kind of moments when I thought about reflecting on my own career in nonprofit and early childhood, and the great opportunities those of us who worked in the field of early childhood have around this topic. Because, you know, as Bill said, we talk a lot in early childhood about the first 1,000 days, all of that's happening and growing that happens. Tremendous amount of stuff that's going on with young babies in those first 1,000 days, including young children are building their cultural development and identity, and they are also forming racism at that time as well. It starts very young. And so I wanted to be able to not only tell people about this, to educate people, but also to say, hey, this is how we can have these conversations. And this is part of what Before Racism does. Part of the reason why I believe that it's so difficult for us to do anything about racism is because we can't have a conversation about it as adults. We struggle with it. We don't know the words to say. Well, with Before Racism, it gives you the words to say. It helps you not only deal with the things that you are dealing with as an adult, but also what do you say to young children. And then, and here's my dream and hope, that we'll be able to raise children that can have these conversations. And as they're able to have these conversations, they'll be able to work out and do something about racism. So that is why I'm firm supporter of Before Racism, and I'm so glad that Bill did call me to come closer and get involved. So I want to thank you for inviting me here today to talk about this. And